Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Avery. I'm the Senior Director of Science at Beyond Celiac, and welcome to today's webinar, which is how to talk about celiac disease and the gluten-free diet holiday edition. This webinar is thanks to our friends at Takeda Pharmaceuticals. Here with me today are three of my wonderful coworkers, all of whom have celiac disease. So they are going to answer your questions that have been submitted by you as you signed up for this webinar about how to handle celiac disease, the gluten-free diet, and the holidays. If you have any other questions as we go, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll be able to ask them as well. So I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves, starting with Lauren.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Kate. I'm Lauren Wallach, the social media coordinator here at Beyond Celiac. And I was diagnosed with celiac disease 18 years ago. So most of my life I have had celiac and have had to navigate that in various situations. So I'm excited to talk to everybody today about our tips and tricks. For my holiday season activities, I'm going home to spend some time with my family. So I think I will largely have a gluten-free holiday, which I'm looking forward to. I can pass it to Ashley. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Berg. I'm the Associate Director of Science here at Beyond Celiac. I am the newest member of this team who's on the call today. I was diagnosed with celiac disease about 20 years ago. So, like Lauren, more of my life I've had celiac disease than not. Though I do recall what non-gluten-free food tastes like. One of my sisters also has celiac disease, so in terms of holidays and navigating food and things like that, it's a lot easier when there's two people who have a dietary restriction than just me. But I will be spending time with my family, and everyone's pretty respectful of the gluten-free diet, so it makes it really easy for me. So excited to talk about this today, and I'm going to pass it over to Bailey.
Hi, I'm Bailey. I'm the Associate Director of Communications here at Beyond Celiac. And I was diagnosed with celiac disease while I was in college. Most of my life I've been eating gluten. I've been gluten-free for like seven years now, maybe something like that. And I do spend the holidays with my family, but there is nothing gluten-free. I am usually fending for myself, which is fine and okay. It just yeah, adds a different perspective.
And I do not have celiac disease, which is why I get to be the one asking the questions, not the one answering the questions. But I will just say that so we have a variety of perspectives with our three panelists today, but this isn't like an official Beyond Celiac perspective. What we've asked them to do is talk about how they handle the holidays. So how you handle the holidays or what you might feel more comfortable with is up to you. We're not prescribing anything on on this webinar. We're just talking about how a couple people handle things. So if you don't feel safe doing something, you have to decide what works for you, and what risk you're willing to take. Our first question is, when you're in a situation where you could bring up your celiac disease because you're maybe at a party, you're briefly chatting with someone and they notice you're not eating, how do you decide if you're even going to mention the fact that you have celiac disease?
Yeah, so I am usually of the opinion that I don't mention it unless it's necessary. Um, and it's as simple as that.
I usually will bring it up, unless I have some reason to think that the interaction is going to be really short or kind of inconsequential. But otherwise, if it's at a work party, obviously a work party here at Beyond Celiac is a little bit different, but at my previous jobs, like I would just be very transparent about it and generally found that I had allies everywhere I worked, who were willing to make sure that there was safe food for me. But I do try to bring it up because I think it's a good opportunity to educate people. Now, earlier in my diagnosis, maybe I wouldn't have. like 20 years in, feel like I'm just, yeah, this is what's going on. This is why I'm not going to eat. No offense to anyone kind of approach.
I'm kind of in between you both, I think. I think I agree with Ashley. The longer my diagnosis has gone on, the more likely I am to be the first one to bring it up. And now working here, I feel like it certainly gets brought up more often and earlier than it used to, because what do you do? Oh, I work at a celiac organization. Oh, why? What's the connection there? Um, I feel like that has helped me to know that it's okay to bring it up seemingly with quote unquote no reason, because I think you're right. There are allies everywhere if you can kind of share that information. So it's nice when people are able to back you up in those work party situations.
So taking it kind of the next step. So you've brought up celiac disease to someone. You've said, "Oh, I'm gluten-free. I have celiac disease." And they say, "Oh, what's that?" How do you introduce someone to celiac disease who doesn't know what it is?
So I always say that it's an autoimmune disease, um, because it is. Also, I mean, when you're out at like a restaurant, sometimes it's easier to call it an allergy because then sometimes people just understand the severity of it a little bit more. Um, and yeah, I guess that is how I immediately try to communicate that it is a severe thing. It's not like an intolerance where I can just have a few bites and be okay. It's like it's similar to an allergy. If I have gluten, it'll be like having food poisoning. So that's why I take it so seriously. And then generally people understand that it's not something I'm gonna play around with. So I guess I go on the offensive.
Okay, I'll go. Um, yeah, I'd say it's an autoimmune disease. Yeah, I think a lot of people have heard of gluten-free diets, right? This is like the plight of somebody with celiac disease is there's benefits from everyone knowing what gluten-free food is, and then also, some negative impact there in terms of people just following kind of a fad diet who don't actually need everything gluten-free. But yeah, I say it's an autoimmune disease, and basically, when I eat gluten, my immune system attacks my intestines and leaves me very sick. And, sometimes I'll go into detail of when I was diagnosed, I was really, really sick for a very long time, and I feel so much better now, just to kind of underscore how serious it is. I don't want to be dismissive.
I feel like people often want to ask about symptoms, or they'll be like, so like what happens if you eat it? Like what would happen if you had a little bit today? And I personally don't love going into details about all the nitty-gritty, everything that's going on. So yeah, that's why I just say food poisoning. I feel like that kind of gets across the intensity of it. At least for me, not
Mhm.
everybody has the same symptoms.
Yeah,
Lauren?
the symptoms thing comes to mind for me too, because I find nowadays that most people will be like, oh, I have a cousin with celiac. Oh, I went to college with somebody with celiac. Because we're finding it is, the incident or rate of it is about 1 in 100, which, like, think about it. You probably know about 100+ people, so you probably know somebody with celiac. And so if people come back with that reaction response, I think that's such a great opportunity to kind of be like, oh, what does that look like for them? Like some people have to go to the doctor because their body is reacting so strongly in the moment, and some people don't even react externally to gluten at all. So I like to take those moments as education of like, this is what my symptoms are now, not as GI related, they're more like brain fog related. And so I do feel like I can talk about it in public a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to discuss what celiac looks like for different people.
And usually, if somebody brings up that they have symptoms or they're like, oh, I should really try that or something, I always tell them to get tested. Get tested for celiac before you go gluten free. Um, and I'll do that for, acquaintances, friends, anything like that. If it's a family member, it's a little different because we actually did some research into this, how best to communicate the risks to family members, right? Because celiac disease is a genetic condition, so it often runs in families. So if you have celiac disease, your relatives are more likely to, they have a higher risk of developing celiac disease. Um, but the research that we did shows that they don't love hearing about it in like a group setting, that those conversations are most productive when they're one-on-one, kind of apart from the rest of the group in person rather than over text or over call. So I have a huge family. And so especially when I was first diagnosed, if somebody like a cousin or something was like, "Oh yeah, like I'm running into those things too," I'd kind of pull them aside, "Come here, let's talk, let's chat a little. Let me tell you about this disease."
Has anyone else had a situation where you've had to talk to uh, either someone who says, "Oh, I have symptoms similar to that," or a relative who's like, "Oh," it's like slowly dawning on them at the same time that it could be celiac disease.
I'm not really. I mean, when I was diagnosed, my sister was diagnosed right after. Like she had had issues for a long time. And when we figured out what was going on with me, it was like, oh, you should get tested. That was the advice. Everyone in the family get tested. But I don't think I've had conversations with other extended family members who kind of had some symptoms present and thought, hey, maybe you've got this going on. Um, but I mean, right, it is a tough conversation. And just thinking as a patient about the first time you heard about celiac disease and how that made you feel, and, just that kind of overwhelm, it is something to be really cognizant of when you're talking to other people, is how they may feel that overwhelm and to do it in the right environment.
I'm still working. I've got a family member too that have some pretty similar symptoms, but they're not willing yet to go gluten-free. Or like they told me, I'm pretty sure I have it, but I still want to drink beer on the weekends and stuff. And it's so those conversations are still in progress. I don't bring it up every time I see them because then they're just like not gonna want to see me anymore. But every now and again, I'll kind of nudge them about, or I'll be like, "Hey, this food's really good," and then I have them eat it, and I'm like, "And it's gluten free," and so that they've already tried it, and they're like, "Wait, it's kind of good." And I'm like, "Yeah, gluten free isn't as bad as it used to be."
Definitely not. Definitely come a long way.
Yeah.
I think that that's what some of our research showed, was that it's the diet that really keeps some people who might suspect they have symptoms from getting officially diagnosed. Which I can understand. Sometimes I think about it. I was just saying that to Ashley the other day as I was eating a sandwich. I was like eating the sandwich, and sometimes I think about what would happen if I had celiac disease, um, and what I might miss the most if I had celiac disease. Having had a lot of gluten-free bread at Beyond Celiac events, I can understand the bread thing, at the very least.
That's why we need treatments and a cure for celiac.
Yes.
So people can get diagnosed and not have to worry about eating a 100% gluten-free diet.
We had a workshop last year where we served like gluten-free sandwiches on gluten-free bread, and it was not all people with celiac disease, but all of our events are always fully gluten-free. And I said that it's a good reminder for people about why we need treatments and a cure to help people, of course, but also so that people can stop eating really bad gluten-free bread.
Yeah, man, they gotta get that. They gotta figure out that bread thing for real.
There's a few
There
better
are.
options now, but I know that that's not the purpose of this. As much as I just want to talk about like these are my favorite brands.
Well, hit us up afterwards for recommendations on the best the best gluten-free bread.
Not sponsored.
Yeah. So when speaking of the diet, so when you're introducing the gluten-free diet to someone who maybe has heard about it from like a fad perspective, but not maybe a celiac disease gluten-free diet, how do you talk about that? What are kind of the highlights that you hit?
I do the classic. Gluten is in wheat, barley, and rye. Um, and I again bring up allergies. I say it's like an allergy. That's how careful you have to be with it. And then I also mention that you can't kill gluten with like sanitizer. Sometimes people will be like, oh, but like, I killed it with I don't know, wet wipes or something. And it's like, well, we can't really kill it. Oh, also, sometimes people will be like, well, I put it in the oven or I fried it above this temperature, and so that kills the gluten. But gluten's not alive, right? It's not like a protein or a microbe. I mean, it is a protein, sorry. It's not a microbe. It's not a little organism. You can't kill it. You just have to use soap and water.
Yeah, I think that's where the allergy thing kind of comes into handy is come let me start that over. I think that's where the allergy comparison is handy because people understand cross-contamination and cross-contact in an allergy sense that like you are washing it, it just needs to be gone or perhaps an object that has never touched the thing in the first place if you're really worried about it. So I feel like that comparison is very helpful.
Something that was surprising to me when I was first diagnosed, and I think is still surprising to other people if they haven't heard about it, is that I switched out like my pots and pans and cutting boards, which you don't actually have to do. But I found for me personally, it just felt better to have my own stuff. So I didn't have to worry about like cross contact.
I think that something I think about a lot is the oat issue. And when I was a kid and was diagnosed, the thing I memorized was gluten is in wheat, rye, barley, oats, malt, and spelt. And gluten is not in oats. Oats are gluten-free, but oats are often grown and then rolled in the same fields and factories as wheat, and so they become contaminated, quote unquote, with gluten. And that's why having gluten-free oats, certified gluten-free oats, is really important for somebody with celiac. If you don't have celiac or you don't know that, you might not know that just putting oats, you Google, are oats gluten-free? The answer comes up yes. Just putting any old oats in your muffins is going to, be safe for somebody who's gluten-free. It's not always safe for somebody with celiac. And so I feel like oats is one that I often in this like the first couple conversations about celiac with somebody, I try to remember to bring that up because I see that one come up a lot in my life.
Did you have like
Yes.
was that like an acronym or something? The
I remember being like gluten is in wheat, rye, barley, oats, malt, spelt. Like that's like in my because malt
we
and
should get
spelt are not. We should get an acronym. Yeah, we should. Can we make something?
that would
We
be
can
good.
anagram it.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that, Lauren. When I was diagnosed, the guidance was don't eat oats. They're not gluten free. So it was I can't eat wheat, rye, barley, and oats. And then it became, I remember when it became like a thing that like maybe oats are okay and if they're certified gluten free. And that changed my life. It was like, oh my God, there's stuff I can eat. I was a college student. So like having the ability to eat a granola bar was life changing or just granola. Like oats. I eat so many oats to this day. So that change was great. But I remember it was no oats, and then I would say wheat, rye, barley, and sometimes oats. But yeah, just to
Yeah.
explain those things. And I think the other challenging thing I've definitely noticed over the years in a work environment is you're eating lunch with people, they see what you're eating and they see you're eating pasta or bread and it's gluten free, right? Like you're eating gluten free stuff, but they'll be like, well, I thought you couldn't eat that because it wasn't gluten free. Or they just, with oats, they assume all oats are gluten free, right? Because they see you eating it. So that's just, one example of where you have to be really careful and clear that, yes, I'm eating bread, but this bread is not made with anything with gluten, but and I can see why people can get confused by that because so many people aren't considering what's in the food that they're eating, right? What bread is made of and things like that. But yeah, that is how I generally introduce the gluten-free diet now is yeah, you might see me eat these things, but they're all gluten-free. Right? Like, and I think that's important too, because you don't want people to think that you cheat, right? Like, you want people to understand this is always how I eat, right? There's no exceptions to this.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because that's one of the places where like the fad diet has, I think, made it harder for people with celiac disease or the people who are gluten free except for having a beer at dinner or gluten free except for, they still like croutons on their salad or, or something like that. Like that stuff isn't okay when you're when you're eating out, especially I think is where it gets a little bit more tricky.
It's kind of funny with that because it really ends up being like a we should just be concerned about what we are eating for ourselves. Like people are so interested in other people's business in that way. And like if somebody is doing a gluten-free diet in a fad way, I don't really care except for that it has made being having celiac more I guess more difficult to understand the severity of, but like people are allowed to do whatever, you know what I mean? Like if I'm eating my gluten-free diet, and even if somebody happened to think that I was eating gluten, like unless they're worried about my health, it's like, dude, like it doesn't matter. Mind your own,
Right, yeah.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone should be making the choice that is right for them. It's just that
Yeah.
it winds up reflecting on everyone if some
Yeah.
people aren't taking it seriously, which should not be how it is, but kind of winds up being how it is.
Totally.
So if you start talking to someone about celiac disease or you already know that they are skeptical about celiac disease or, are kind of dismissive of celiac disease, how do you approach those situations?
So the first thing I do is evaluate my relationship with the person, right? Like if this is an acquaintance and I'm not going to see them again, then I'll just kind of disengage and, cut the conversation short. It's not really going to impact things in the future. But if this is like a relative that I see often or somebody that I want to have a good close friendship with, then I go into genuine education, like make a real attempt to explain why this is a serious thing or there's a long history of celiac disease. The earliest indication that we have of celiac disease is from a skeleton of a woman in Italy in like the first or second century. So this isn't a new thing. It's not just fat. Um, and if that doesn't work, then it's just kind of a sad realization that maybe they are not ready to support me in the way that I need to be supported at the moment.
I feel like I haven't encountered too many skeptics about it, um, which I feel really fortunate about because that would be really challenging, especially if it's like close family members or your parents or things like that. Yeah, I think highlighting the severity of it in terms of exposure is important. So saying when we're talking about something that's certified gluten-free, we're measuring gluten by parts per million, right? That's how small of an amount we're talking about. So no, I can't just have a bite of this and say, oh, I won't get that sick. Because even if I'm not outwardly sick, my immune system is responding in a way that is not good to my health. But I think Bailey's right. You have to think about the relationship you have with that person and also just like the energy you have in that moment, right? Like if it's been a long day and you're tired and you don't want to have that conversation, okay, you know, that's you can think that, but that's not how I adhere to the diet.
If you want to be a little bit snarky, you can always say something like, okay, well, you can just talk to my doctor about that then. The person who's in medical school for many years, sort of put the onus on a professional.
Love that.
Or you could tell them to visit beyondceliac.org and they could check out all the information and resources that we have on our website to educate them about, the importance of following the gluten-free diet, all the various symptoms that affect the people with celiac disease, and read some of the patients' stories about how it's impacted their lives. I mean, really, I'm very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have the opportunity to connect with other people with celiac disease. But there are a lot of people who have celiac disease who may be listening to this that literally don't personally know anyone with celiac disease, and that is isolating. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, and I think that's actually a really good point. Maybe a way to respond to a skeptic is to say, just because it's new to you doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Or just because you haven't met somebody with celiac disease before doesn't mean it's not a real condition.
If you just ask for someone's phone and type in Beyond Celiac and say, come back to me when you're done reading. Our website is huge. It will take them at least a year to get through it all. You'll have had a chance to get really far away. There's a lot of things for them to read on there. Okay, so getting into a little bit more about kind of maybe the holidays or parties, how do you talk to someone who thinks that what they are doing is being a generous host and they keep offering you food that isn't safe? So maybe it's like an oat muffin of unknown origins or something that like they think they maybe have done their research, but you're not sure that something is actually safe. How do you handle that?
This one is so hard because I can tell that they genuinely want to support and help me, but they're gonna feel worse if I get sick, right? So if I don't trust it, um, honestly, one easy thing to do is ask for like the product labels, right? And say like, oh, well, I have to eat things that are labeled gluten-free. Do you still have the packaging for all of the ingredients that you put into this thing? And maybe they do, maybe they brought a bag of chips and it says gluten-free on there and you're like, great, this is phenomenal. But probably they're not going to have all of the packaging, or they're going to have something that isn't labeled gluten-free. And then you can point to that and say like, hey, I really appreciate that you went through all this trouble, but unfortunately, this doesn't say gluten-free, and so I don't feel comfortable eating this.
Yeah, I think that those are all great points. I definitely struggle with this one. I feel like people pleasery about it sometimes, but at the end of the day, like my health is more important than, this person's feelings at this point because they can come to understand if they're offended, they can come to understand why I wouldn't want to make myself sick. I hope. And yeah, again, I think it's this like evaluating the relationship thing. Like, hopefully, when you say no the first time, somebody who wants to support you and understands that this is a serious condition, understands that. And if they don't and keep pushing it on you, it's kind of information about, yeah, what is important to them in that relationship.
I think it also highlights, like this conversation highlights, if you're hosting, definitely reach out to your guests to see if there are any food allergies, right? Because we talk, we've internally talked about the well-intentioned ally, right? This person who genuinely is trying to do something nice for you to make sure you feel included by baking you something, and everything's gluten-free except they used peanut butter in it that was clearly, I mean, everybody's peanut butter jar has bread in it. Except if you're in a house where it's gluten-free, or a shared house like mine where it's like somebody's scooping it out with a knife and then getting a second knife and you're all this silverware just to put some peanut butter and bread. But I think people just don't, if you don't have to think about those types of cross contact, you don't. And I've had like a friend say, we'd really love to have you over for dinner. I have a good understanding of what's gluten free. I can cook for you. And I said, well, the issue is, well, I understand that you do have a good understanding of, and I believe you. It's that it's all the other stuff in your kitchen, right? It's that butter, it's the peanut butter, it's whatever it's your sugar, right? Because you probably have used the same measuring cup that you dipped into your flour and then you dipped it into your sugar, right? It's all of those things that people aren't considering. So, hosts who don't have celiac disease or food allergies, please ask people if they have allergies and ask them what you could do to make sure that they feel comfortable and included in the, festivities of sharing a meal. And if somebody says that they don't feel comfortable, it's always just nice to hear from somebody. I don't mind if you bring your own food if that's what would make you comfortable, right? Like I would love to get that. There would be instances that I would, but I almost feel more rude bringing my own stuff. So it is really difficult to navigate, and I don't have the answers, but these are just some of the considerations I I take into account when deciding where to eat, when to eat, by who, by who's preparing it.
So I actually do tend to bring my own food. And if you are somebody with celiac disease, and you know that you're going to go somewhere where it's going to be mostly gluten eaters, I really encourage you to get ahead of it and reach out to the host and say, hey, I'm probably just going to bring my own food, so you don't have to worry about making something for me. Or you can ask them, hey, are you going to buy anything prepackaged? Right. I'm always getting prepackaged stuff is always my go-to because it just says gluten-free on there. And I know I can trust that. Don't have to worry about it. It's easy for them. It's easier for me.
Agreed.
It, I've thought about this stuff so much more since working at Beyond Celiac. And also my son had egg and milk allergies for a while. And so we had to do a lot of talking to wait staff and, bringing his own food, which is much easier when you already have a toddler. It's a lot easier to be like, yeah, I brought his food because he's two and picky. But I have thought about it so much and this is not really related to the holidays, but at weddings. And like you're filling out a response card and there's like no place to put any kind of allergen thing. And my husband and I were at a wedding in the spring and I just kept looking around and I was like, there's so little here that people with like various allergies could eat. It was a lot of um there's just a lot of definitely gluten. And there was also sushi, which rules out a whole bunch of people. Plus, sushi is a little bit like polarizing. And I was pregnant at the time, so I was like, well, that's out. So it's interesting to me, and it was all like a buffet situation, so that was its own thing. But I was just sitting there looking around as maybe I'm the pessimistic wedding guest looking around and being like, if I had celiac disease or someone in here has celiac disease, here are all the things that they cannot eat uh, because of this situation. And they didn't ask about allergens or any kind of issues. So
Yeah.
it's been funny to have that come up in my own life and to be in those situations where I'm like, oof, this would be,
Yeah.
I'd have my own
Um,
snacks.
That's next level ally, right? There's not
Yeah.
even anyone who you're standing up for, but you're still like, you're feeling
you're
the pain
thinking
of
about
somebody who
us.
might.
Celiac empath. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But yeah, I guess if somebody is not taking no for an answer, or you can tell that like they are really hurt, because I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, right? Is like they're feeling like they did all of this and they just want to be helpful, but
And I
A,
think,
some,
go ahead. I was just gonna say maybe a little bit embarrassed too. Like they think they did all the
yeah,
research, and so that's kind of the
yeah.
reaction. Like, oh, I really thought I got this. Like, I really thought I got it right.
Yeah, and if that's how they're reacting, then, I think you can go into empathy and say, yeah, it was super hard. Like, I got sick so many times in the first few months after diagnosis because there's just so much to consider. So, don't feel bad about it. I've done the same thing. But I just don't want to be vomiting in your bathroom today. And Lauren always likes to say, no is a complete sentence. Um,
It's true. It is. And so is no thank you. No thank you is even more of a complete sentence. I recently I'm curious what you guys think about this situation. I think it's kind of a similar answer, but I was recently in a situation where people were ordering pizza for like a large group. I was like helping plan an event, and as part of a thank you for volunteering at the event, they were ordering pizza. And there's nowhere in my town that I feel safe getting pizza out, gluten-free pizza. It's all like the crust contact is just crazy. And so I was like, I'm okay, don't worry about me. And someone there knew I was gluten-free and kept like naming different places that had gluten-free crust. And I kept being like, I'm okay, don't worry about me. I don't want to eat from there. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go get dinner. Like I felt like everything, and they kept bringing it up. And so finally, I went. We might talk about this later, but I went into this kind of like risk analysis mindset and was explaining to them like this event is important to me, and I don't want to be sick tomorrow and miss it. So it's not worth it to me to risk that to get free pizza. Like that might make me sick. Even if it's like a 50% chance, even if it's like a 2% chance, that's still, I don't really want to do that today. Some days, maybe, but I don't know. I'm curious what do you do in situations where like that's part of the like compensation or the experience of being out
Mhm.
with people?
No, I think that's a really good point is to explain your reasoning. Sometimes that helps people understand why. It helps them understand why it doesn't matter how much they offer or how many different places they look up. Like it's just not going to happen that day, you know?
Yeah, I like the approach of how open am I to being sick right now? You know, I mean, right. Sometimes if you're traveling, right, no risk, right? You don't want to be sick on a plane, on a train, going someplace new. That is like the time. And that's kind of the hardest time to find food and know you're safe is when you're traveling and it's the time you least want to be sick. Um, which I know this is a whole thing for our community, right? Is feeling like their diagnosis prevents them from being able to travel. And I'm not saying this to say that you can't. You definitely can still do it. But it is a lot of mental energy that goes into
Mhm.
planning and thinking ahead,
Mhm.
and that extra suitcase full of snacks that you're bringing abroad is just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I think analyzing the time, place, and person is also helpful. So like whether okay, person keeps offering you food and you keep saying no, but they just won't stop. Um, you know, depending on the person, if you only see them once a year, Aunt Cheryl from 3 states over, and you're flying back the next day, you can just say, "Hey, I'm full right now, but maybe I'll take some home with me tomorrow." And you take it home with you, don't eat it, you throw it away. I think it's totally okay to lie and be like, "Yeah, it was great," because you only see her once a year. Sometimes that is the easiest thing to do to just get somebody off your back. That is like a last resort. I try first to educate and explain, but sometimes it's not happening. Or if you live with people who eat gluten, you can take the leftovers and you can just hand it to them. You can be like, "Hey, Aunt
They
Cheryl made
love
this.
that.
She thinks it's amazing. You eat it."
They love that.
So what about when you're staying with friends and family? I feel like that's a level up from I'm going to someone's house for dinner, which
Yeah.
is pretty easy to bring your own food. You can bring your own food for a whole weekend. I think that it's possible too, but it does add, I think, more conversation. So how does your maybe calculation around it change when you're staying with someone else?
Yeah, so I'm actually would be really curious to hear Ashley and Lauren's response to this as well, because I have been dating my partner for a year and a half now and haven't met the family yet because the family is in Texas, different state than us. And we were thinking about maybe going to see them for Christmas this year, but after some initial conversations about celiac disease and the gluten-free diet, didn't seem like there was enough knowledge there quite yet where I would be safe for a week or two there. Not 2 weeks, probably just a week. I don't have that much PTO. Um, but anyway, so the plan this year is instead we're going to be separate for Christmas, and my partner is going to go down there and try to lay a little more groundwork. Bring some things up here and there, so that next year or some other time when I go down, they'll be a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more prepared to have those conversations, and honestly, your partner should be like your ally with their family, your family, wherever you guys are. Um, Hopefully, they are sticking up for you and able to have some of those hard conversations. Maybe if somebody doesn't respect your no, they will respect your partner's no, which is a little sad if that's the case, but sometimes you just need backup. Ashley, Lauren?
Yeah. It's tough. I can't remember the last time I just stayed at somebody else's house. So I guess maybe the conversation I would have is that I would want to be preparing a lot of my own food and volunteer to prepare food for everyone else and just say, we can have really good food while I'm here that's gluten-free. I personally, I really like to cook, so I wouldn't mind doing that. Or, if you wanted to get prepackaged stuff that, you upfront say, I'm going to go to the store when we get in town to get some gluten-free stuff so I feel safe eating while I'm here. And I would just ask that, nobody touch the gluten-free stuff that was very expensive. I don't want it to get glutened and,
Yeah, I
maybe.
mean, you could even ask your host to do that. Like, hey, like if you want to help me, here are a few good brands that I know are safe, and you can buy those and store them in the fridge, freezer, pantry, whatever, so that when you get there, that food's already ready for you.
Yeah, that's great. I think I I have gone into those situations really only with people I'm very close with. And so I've been able to be like, do you guys want to do the whole time all gluten-free, or do you want me to do my own stuff separate? Either is fine. It's kind of just like those feel like the two options. Because if we're trying to do like the same, like two of the same meal, but part of it is gluten-free, part sometimes it just gets very complicated. And so many dishes it's too, and the cross contact becomes an issue. And so yeah, if I think the grocery shopping together is good, or sending people with a list, helping in the kitchen, I would agree with all that. This is something I'm like feel like I'm really trying to navigate in this time of life. Like being away for like one night or two night sort of trips and weekends and stuff, and like making sure I have enough food with me just in case I can't go buy food.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't be afraid to to bring your own pots and pans. If you're flying, get a checked bag, put some of your tried and true things in there. If you're driving, so easy, just get a cooler, put a lot of food in there. You can bring it with you. You can meal prep in advance and then put it in like your cooler or whatever, drive there, and you already have a good set of meals that you just need to microwave while you're staying with somebody. Um, I've heard that some people would bring like so they would pack like their own pots and pans, like a little like single serving style one, and then they would also pack their own like burner, those like individual burners that you can like plug in. Um, I guess because they didn't feel comfortable using the person's stove or something. But yeah, I think there are lots of options. I think it's hard around the holidays because so many places are closed. Like so many gluten-free restaurants in the town, right? It's one thing if you're like staying in New York City with relatives and, there's tons of restaurants. It's another thing if you're going to rural Texas or Oklahoma and the closest grocery store is like 40 miles away, right? Wait, 40 minutes. I don't know distances. Sorry. Anyway, those are our tips, I think, for staying with somebody else for the holidays.
I think that's good. One of the questions that we got from the community specifically about this was what other they're saying they know to avoid wood cutting boards and shared toasters. Are there any other kitchen appliances or things to watch out for at someone else's house if you're trying to prep your food there, prep a safe gluten-free meal at someone else's house?
I'm a big bring your own colander person. I feel pots and pans, I'm kind of like give them a good wash, and I personally will feel fine, but I can't remember if colanders were mentioned in there, but that's like the little there's like pasta gunk that gets stuck in the colander holes, and that freaks me out. So that's mine for sure.
When it comes to baking something in the oven, right? Like maybe you made mashed potatoes beforehand and you just need to like heat them up when you get there. Put it on the top shelf. Because a lot of times people are cooking multiple things in the oven at once. And if there's something that contains gluten on the top and then maybe it overflows and dribbles down into yours, then yours is now has gluten in it. So put your thing on the top shelf. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I would say just get a lay of the kitchen, right? See, are there crumbs everywhere from other foods? Like, you just have to kind of do an assessment of the space when you get somewhere, and make sure that, there's just little things that people just don't think of, that once you have celiac disease, you're just like watching everything everyone's doing in a kitchen, especially your kitchen if you're trying to keep it gluten-free, right? If you get to the house and somebody just, rolled out a pie crust on the counter with flour, that's a different situation, right? That's got to get dealt with.
Yeah. And if you're gonna be cooking enough, or like if you're staying there, so you're gonna be cooking for over a few days, I think it's worth it to ask for a little space in the kitchen, right? Like this counter for the next 3 days is completely gluten-free. Nobody else can put things there. So you can do a kind of a deep clean, and then that is your space. Or even if they have like a spare table, just like sometimes people bring out like those wobbly white tables for like the holidays or whatever. Like maybe they bring it out and it's like that's your place for the next few days, where you put all of your gluten stuff. I mean, gluten-free stuff. Sorry, I got scared. Oh, and also you'll want to get new sponges, towels, rags. Um, So don't use towels or rags or sponges that have been used with gluten-containing foods, because there's probably going to be lots of little crumbs and things that could easily transfer to your stuff, which you are trying to clean.
That's a good tip. BYO sponge and wobbly table. That's
Well, preferably not wobbly, but
but they
you
always
gotta make.
are. It doesn't seem to matter. They always are. Okay, we've got two more questions. And then we can, if anyone who's watching has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat as we wrap up here. So what if you have multiple dietary restrictions? So for a lot of people with celiac disease, especially in the beginning, maybe they also can't have dairy. Or I mean, it could be anything else. You might just have celiac disease and another allergy. What does anything change? What do you guys recommend?
I'll just say it's hard when you have other dietary restrictions, even if they're by choice, right? Like vegetarians. And for a while, I lived the gluten-free vegan life, which was very challenging. Really, you just have to cook all your own food all the time. Um, but I think that, people should, of course, respect the food choices you make, even if they're by choice and not a dietary requirement. Um, yeah, it is hard to navigate. In terms of like the prepackaged stuff, there's a lot of prepackaged gluten-free stuff that is dairy-free, egg-free, really does address the most common allergens, which is both nice, and also if you don't have the other allergens, you're like, well, this would be better if there was egg in here. And I could eat egg and that would be nice. But the gluten-free community is inclusive in that way. So yeah, I think it's hard and I don't have an answer. I just hope anyone listening feels like they're seen, knowing that it's hard.
Yeah, I think it's that extreme communication. Once again, I have a friend who was recently diagnosed with celiac after several years of knowing that she has a nut allergy. And I was like, oh, dude, that is so brutal. But she kind of already knew how to have a lot of those conversations. And so I think for her, the celiac diagnosis was not as shocking, or like life altering, because she was already worried about a lot of those things. And for her, a lot of it has been communicating to people that like she can't do almond flour. That's she's gluten free, but that she also has this other thing, so she can't do almond flour. So I think, yeah, just continuing to be as communicative as you're able to be is it's hard, but it's worth it. It's your health.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat before we go on. If there's no visible crumbs, do you have to worry about gluten residue like on a refrigerator handle?
I would be wary of it. I think, so technically, according to the FDA, anything that has 20 parts per million or less of gluten is safe to eat for most people with celiac disease, i.e., you can technically have extremely small amounts of gluten a day, it's like a few crumbs. So a little bit of residue on the fridge probably, if everything else is gluten free, you're probably going to be fine. But me personally, I would be wary of it, and I would ask the person to wipe it down before I start doing whatever I need to do. Like Lauren said, good hand washing. Wash your hands before you eat or touch any of your stuff in somebody else's home. And something, so I lived for a brief time with my parents after I was diagnosed, and we had we had a system where I would use like the top part of the handle and then they would use like the bottom part of the handle. So I just didn't have to worry about it. Um, or like you could even wrap duct tape around. So like the red part is the part I can touch and the blue part is the part other people can touch. But uh, that's pretty intense. Most people don't need that. So I would say, you can just politely ask them to wipe it down or maybe say like, hey, can I have a paper towel? I'm just going to wipe this off really quick. Ashley?
Yeah, agree. I live in a house that is not totally gluten free, and we pretty much have a pretty strict rule of anyone who comes into the house. If you're eating gluten and you're touching it, you're going to wash your hands before you touch anything else. It just makes it a lot easier for me, especially as the primary cook in the house, to not have to keep washing my hands with everything that I'm doing. Um, you know, I don't think we have like a full scientific answer of what in the kitchen needs to be cleaned and right like and that is some of the challenges of this disease. We just don't have all the answers and it's not totally black and white the way we would like for it to say safe, not safe, safe, not safe. But I think you just have to be reasonable, right? If you don't feel like you can ask somebody to wipe everything down in their kitchen, then you need to make sure you're cleaning your hands as you're preparing your food.
I think Bailey's rule from before of like if you can keep your stuff in its own space helps because this is where like the well-meaning person could easily cross, get cross contact on your food, like trying to prep something for you that's gluten-free or saying like, nope, this is mine. I think that kind of helps alleviate some of that potential for them to have touched something that has flour on it and then go touch your stuff if you're not in control. Okay, so our last question from our list is you've done your best. You have said no to almost anything you thought had gluten in it, and you get glutened. Whether whether it's a just you were taking a risk or something you didn't know, or what do you do now? Maybe you're at let's say you're at someone else's house. Maybe you're not spending the night there or staying, but like, you're not at home and you've gotten glutened. What happens now?
I think it's worth letting them know that you got sick, but in a polite way coming from a place of education, right? Like it's not going to feel good for anyone if you respond and are like, "You got me sick. I'm never eating at your place again. Like you're a terrible person," right? Like that's nobody wants to hear that. And truly, they probably did not intend to do it. They probably feel worse about it than you do, honestly. Um, but yeah, I think it's worth reaching out and being like, hey, I got sick. And I know I tried this thing that you made. Would you mind sharing all of the ingredients with me again? Or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes if I'm trying to figure out like how to let them know, I will say that I got sick and I'm trying to figure out if it was something I ate. Like I have another thing that I'm assessing and then like allowing, it almost allows them to be like, that was me. I put soy sauce in that, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I think most people hopefully are not going to make that mistake again. And so in a way, there is this kind of bright side of like, maybe you don't trust that person to cook for you anymore, but maybe you do because now you know that they understand the severity of it. So I don't know. I guess that's just my own personal like not I don't want to write that off right away, but it's totally understandable if somebody accidentally glutens you and you decide you're not comfortable eating with them anymore. And I definitely second what Bailey said. It's not your fault. This is the world we live in. It's really, really hard to avoid gluten. So don't beat yourself up more than your body already is.
Yeah, and I think if you're like staying with somebody for a little while, and you get sick at the beginning, definitely worth telling them because then that's an explanation for why you're not going to continue to eat there, why you're just going to have like gluten-free crackers and some fruit, you know?
Yeah, agree, Bailey. I think that conversation for me is based on, is this person going to serve me food again in the future? Or if it's just somebody who's hosting the Christmas party this year and they're never going to make food for me again, am I going to call them and let them know I got sick? Almost definitely not, because that doesn't serve me in any way, and it doesn't serve them to make somebody feel bad, who is like well-intentioned. If it's somebody who is routinely going to make me food, like a family member, I'm definitely going to tell them, hey, I don't know what happened here, but I really was not doing well afterward, and maybe we can troubleshoot what went on. Or if it's a restaurant, certainly I'm gonna reach out to a restaurant and say, I let the team know I was gluten free because I have celiac disease and I still got sick, and I just wanted to let you know. So hopefully this doesn't happen to somebody else, right? Because like especially when you're eating out, you do kind of have that responsibility to other people with celiac disease. I feel like to let a restaurant know if you got sick from something that they thought they were serving you that was safe.
I will also say if you're talking to an individual person, like a friend or family member, I would have that conversation one-on-one. You know, I don't think it needs to be brought up at the dinner table while everybody else is there. Just kind of pull them aside, like Ashley said, like, hey, can we troubleshoot what happened here? Because I wasn't feeling that great. So that is, I think we are at time. Kate, did you want
We are at time. Thank you so much to all three of you for sharing your experiences and your thoughts and your ideas. I think this has been really helpful for everyone, hopefully, who's watching and who's going to see this in the future. Thanks again for Takeda for sponsoring this for us. And we hope that you have a wonderful holiday and a really great new year and gluten-free celebrations all around. So,
Thank you
great.
so much,
Thanks very
Kate.
much.